Thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Tarolyn Plumley. I'm the Marion County Extension intern this summer. I'm going to be talking to you today about Florida's beneficial insects and how to keep them in your garden, in your landscape. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Actually, less than 1% of insects are pests. Many are natural predators, and they keep pest populations in check without us having to use harmful pesticides. They are responsible for pollinating your flowers, and of course, butterflies and bees are aesthetically pleasing. We all love to see beautiful butterflies flying around. So there are several types of beneficial insects. There's pollinators, predators, and parasites and parasitoids, and we'll go over those in a bit more detail. First, we'll talk about pollinators. This is a bumblebee inside of a petunia. So there are butterflies and moths. Over 100 species of butterflies are present in Florida. The caterpillars defoliate plants, but these plants are used to being eaten, and they have evolved to tolerate some levels of damage. So if you see caterpillars eating your plants, go ahead and let them do it, because they'll grow up to be beautiful adults. And over here we have a moth up in the upper right-hand corner. Depending on what time of day you go outside, you'll see butterflies during the day, and you'll probably see moths more towards the evening. Next, we have bees. They are the most important pollinators. Honeybees pollinate about 80% of the crops that we eat. They're present right here. And there's also wild bees that are specialist pollinators of plants, like the southeastern blueberry bee right here, pollinating this blueberry flower. Bees come in a variety of different colorings. They can be black and yellow, like this honeybee over here, and they can be brightly metallic, like this green orchid bee up here. And then down here on the bottom right corner, we have a carpenter bee male with his bright orange fuzzy body and his large green eyes. Next up, we have predators. I could not talk about predators without including a photo of the infamous murder hornet that we've all probably heard about lately. This is a praying mantis eating this murder hornet head. It's kind of a fuzzy photo, but I thought it was really fun. There's actually a YouTube link down here that you can visit and see it in action. So next we have wasps, our first predator. Up here in the upper right, we have a yellow jacket. And down here on the bottom right, we have a cicada killer wasp. These are both usually regarded as pests. You know, we don't like to see them flying around our houses, but they do eat pests like caterpillars and cicadas, and they do pollinate flowers when they sip nectar. The males are territorial, but they can't sting, so that's a plus. The next wasp we have is a Polistes wasp, also called a paper wasp. They paralyze caterpillars to provision their nests for their young. And they're considered valuable garden pollinators because, like I said before, they visit flowers for nectar, and in turn they drop pollen and pollinate the flowers. They're thought to be hazardous, pesky wasps, but they actually rarely sting if you don't threaten them. And next, I'm sure we've all heard about or seen ladybugs around on our plants. The larvae and the adults eat aphids, mealybugs, and mites, which are common plant pests. The larvae are long and flat. They're dark with bright spots, and they look very spiny and have long, slender legs. And then the adult down here with her characteristic red coloring and black spots all over her body up here. They're quite small, but they're very voracious predators. Next up, we have assassin bugs. They use their needle-like beak to inject venom into their prey. They sit around on plants and they wait for aphids to come by. They also attack mosquitoes, various flies, and other soft-bodied insects. They're black, brown, and some of them are brightly colored sometimes. And they're about 1/2 to 1 inch long. Next, we have another important turf pest predator. The big-eyed bugs eat soil-dwelling pests like chinch bugs and caterpillars. They're often confused for chinch bugs, but chinch bugs are darker and a little bit longer than these guys. And as you can see, they have kind of like a greenish coloring and large eyes. Chinch bug eyes are not this large. And they're about 1/8 of an inch long, so they're pretty tiny. Next up, we have predatory stink bugs. These are actually beneficial stink bugs. They don't eat like off of your plants, like the pest stink bug down here, this green one. The nymphs and adults of these stink bugs actually eat pest insects. And they have shorter beaks as opposed to the long, thin mouth parts of the plant-feeding stink bugs. A notable characteristic to ID them in the field are these spines on the end of their like shoulder area called their pronotum. They have spiny projections coming from this area of their body versus pest stink bugs that have a curved or like rounded area around this part of their body. And that's an easy way to distinguish the predatory stink bugs from the pest stink bugs. And on most of these slides, I have EDIS documents down here. So when you're able to view this PowerPoint yourselves, you can click on these links and read more in depth about all of these beneficial insects. So next up, we have earwigs. They eat sod webworms like chinch bugs and other turf pests. They're about 1 inch long with pinchers at the end of their abdomens. A lot of people think that these are, that they can sting, and that's actually not a stinger. They're just little pinchers. The ring-legged earwig is the most common one that you're likely to encounter here in Florida. Next up, we have dragonflies. Adults eat mosquitoes and other flying insects, and their larvae are actually aquatic. So they eat larval aquatic mosquitoes. So they kind of control mosquitoes in all life stages. So we definitely love to keep our dragonflies around. They are very sensitive to pesticides though. So if they're in your garden, that's a good sign because that means you have a healthy landscape. Next, we have lacewings. They can be green or brown in color. I know these aren't the best photos, but they were the best ones that I could find. They're pretty tiny, so they're hard to photograph well. They're only 3/4 of an inch long. Adults can be predaceous. They eat a lot of different plant pests. And larvae like to feed on aphids. Here's one in the middle attacking some aphids. They live in shrubs, weeds, and other crops. And a prominent feature to ID them outside is their transparent wings with a lot of netted veins. They just look very delicate, and that's an easy way to tell them from other insects. Next, we have syrphid flies. There's about 900 species in North America. They're also called hoverflies because when they visit flowers, they hover right above them, like this one right here. They're small and they look like bees and wasps, but they actually do not sting. They're in the fly order, So they're true flies. And their larvae are predaceous. I read that they actually can eat like hundreds of aphids a month or something as larvae. So obviously we want to keep them around and keep those aphids off of our plants. A way to tell them apart from bees is they only have one pair of wings. They're forewings, and their hind wings are actually little knobs. So if you see two pairs of wings, it's a bee. And if you see only one pair, then it's just a fly. Next, we have praying mantises. I'm sure we've all seen praying mantises. They're very large. They have a green or brown body with a triangular head, and they have very characteristic raptorial front legs, so they can easily and quickly grasp onto their prey. They usually wait in foliage for their prey to walk by, and then they'll just pounce on them. Kind of like the bird or hornet video. Next, we're going to go into parasitoids. So this is a species of parasitoid larvae emerging from a tobacco hornworm. I don't know if this species is prevalent in Florida or even present here, but it was just such a cool photo, I had to include it. So the first parasitoid is a parasitoid wasp. And these are very small. They're less than 1/8 inch long. Adults lay their eggs or their larvae in pests or near pests, and then the larvae feed off of the host and use them to develop. These are used as biological controls because they control the pests as adults, and then they can then they just die off. And I heard that they we learned in class actually that they are good biological controls of flies on farms. Next we have tachinid flies, and these are again parasitoid larvae. They're another good biological control agent, like for mole crickets up here pictured on the top right. They look like large houseflies, bees or wasps, but again, they're true flies. And they're pretty fuzzy and they have like this distinct body shape. They either lay their eggs near the host and then the host will eat them. And then the eggs will hatch inside and they'll feed off of the host. Or they'll just directly lay eggs or larvae onto the host. And then once they hatch, they burrow into the host. These guys are pretty interesting. So I couldn't talk about beneficial insects without also talking about beneficial spiders. They are arachnids, they're not true insects, but they're very good at eating pests, and only a few are actually poisonous to humans. First, we have the golden silk spider. They're a large orb weaver, often found in forests and clearings. They catch flying insects in their large circular webs. They usually only bite if they're held, and when they bite, they only really cause local pain and redness. And down here we have a female. She's very large as opposed to this little male right next to her on the top left. And then up here we have another female. The next spider we're going to talk about is the jumping spider. They have large front eyes and they're about 8 to 12 millimeters long. They jump on prey like flies and mosquitoes. They don't create any webs or catch their prey in webs. They just jump on them. They're non-native. The two species in Florida were imported. I think they're like an old world, like tropical species, and they're typically regarded as harmless. So over here we have a female gray wall jumper, and then over here we have the male, and down here we have a female pantropical jumper, and over here we have a male. Next spider we're going to talk about is the green lynx spider. They're They are a common caterpillar predator, but the one con about them is that they also attack beneficial insects, like this one up here that was captured a bumblebee, so that's pretty sad. They're green with red spots and they have black spines on their legs, so that's an easy way to ID them in the field. They're about 16 millimeters, average length for a female. They dart around and they leap on prey. Again, these guys don't make webs, and they rarely are known to bite humans. So going into the attracting beneficial insects part of the PowerPoint, the most important thing to do is not to use insecticides or herbicides, especially in a vegetable garden where you're going to be consuming those things. You don't want to eat them, and you don't want the beneficial insects in your garden to be exposed to them. Also, implement integrated pest management practices, which we'll dive into a little bit more later. An easy way to get low numbers of pests out of the garden, like weeds, is to just hand pull them and to hand kill pests. So if you see like one stink bug, just pick it off the plant and kill it. You don't have to like spray your whole plant. Keep your garden maintained, clean it up, clean up old plant material. That stuff can be used as harborage for the insects. So if you take away a place that they can live and reproduce, then they won't be present and as prevalent of numbers. And you can also use soap and water to kill pests instead of insecticides, but that comes with a level of risk as well, because I've read that that can burn some plants, especially if there's like a degreaser in the soap. So definitely make sure it doesn't have any degreaser if you use soap and water to kill pests. And another important thing you can do is plant native plants. They're already acclimated to our climate better than non-native plants, and they're more resistant to native pest damage because, again, they've evolved with these plants in their presence, and they're used to the damage that they can cause, as opposed to a plant that hasn't been in Florida, hasn't been around our insect populations. And right plant, right place is a very important method to follow, because a plant that's planted in the right place, has the right nutrients, has what it needs to be healthy, can better fight off pests than an unhealthy plant who is not in a good state and can't really spend its resources fighting off insect damage. And I've heard lately that herb gardens are being used for pollinators, helping pollinators. So that's something interesting you could look into as well, or maybe someone could even tell me about those, because I think that's really cool. To attract butterflies, you want to make sure that you're planting their host plants that they use to eat and grow up and develop. If you want to see monarchs around, you would probably want to plant some type of milkweed. The caterpillars grow up into the butterfly. So if you want to see the beautiful butterfly in your yard, again, you have to feed the caterpillars, deal with the little bit of damage that they're going to cause. That's very important to remember. You don't want to kill the caterpillars of the butterflies that you want to see around. Over here is passion flower. Plant that if you want to see Gulf fritillary butterflies or zebra longwings. And then down here, the bottom bright flower is pentis. I've seen numerous butterflies and pollinators go to pentis. It seems like everything loves pentis. So maybe plant some of that if you want to see some butterflies. So attracting wild bees. Leave some areas of your landscape natural. This is a mason bee that I took a picture of on a farm. It was actually shipped to the farmer in like this piece of plywood, like a block of wood, with the holes already drilled into it for the mason bees. And these guys don't excavate their own nests. They don't dig down into the soil or anything. They just use existing holes or burrows in the landscape. And then they cap them with this mud. So leaving some areas of your landscape natural so these bees can utilize them is very important. Also, leave wildflowers alone. I've seen multiple syrphid flies, wild bees, butterflies go to things like Spanish needle and fleabane. So when you're dealing with a pest issue, it's very important to understand what pest you're dealing with. Beneficial insects are often misidentified as pests, so be sure to get an accurate ID so you can choose the right management plan. A lot of pest management plans are targeted towards a specific pest, and they won't work or they might make things worse if you target the wrong thing. So there are several really good insect ID resources. First and foremost, contact your local extension office. They will be able to help you the best. If you want to send a sample to the Insect Identification Lab in Gainesville, I've included this EDIS document on how to submit a sample to them. And also search the EDIS website for insect IDs. There's also some really good featured creatured articles by UF that goes into detail of specific insect species. So for integrated pest management, circling back, it is actually methods that reduce pest populations without relying on chemicals. So IPM involves a variety of practices like preventing insects from getting into your garden in the first place, site selection, again, right plant, right place, and pest exclusion, so maybe like screenings or coverings on your plants to keep the pests out. Chemicals are always going to be the last resort. We want to make sure that we're exhausting every effort to do anything but chemicals first. And then if nothing else works, then we'll have to turn to the chemicals, but we want to try to not have to do that. And here's another good article on by UF IFAS blogs about home gardening IPM. So you might want to check that out if you want to learn more about integrated pest management practices in the garden. And some more IPM strategies: rotate crops. Make sure that you're rotating out full like families and not just species, because a lot of pests attack the same type of crop. And if they always have that crop to eat, they'll continue to be a problem. Make sure you're scouting often, weekly, bi-weekly. A lot of pest problems are easy to tackle when you catch them early. And expect some level of plant damage. In the case of the caterpillars, it's okay if some of your milkweed gets eaten. It's going to come back just fine most often. It's used to getting that damage. And keep your plants healthy. Like I said before, healthy plants can combat pest issues and pests feeding on them if they're healthy. And plants that don't have everything that they need and are unhealthy are probably not going to be able to fight them off as well. If you need to use insecticides, follow the label and spray in the evening. It's always so important. The label is the law when using insecticides, and spraying in the evening is the best if you don't want to catch bees foraging, because they're very sensitive to insecticides. And then harvest your crops promptly. That very ripe thing in your garden is going to attract pests, and get out any dead plant material, because again, this is harborage for pests, and if they don't have anywhere to live or reproduce, then they're not going to be as pestiferous. And then again, here's an EDIS document on integrated pest management strategies. And that is actually the end of my presentation. I know it was kind of quick. Thank you for bearing with me. This was my first time presenting over Zoom. So thank you for sticking along. And if you have any questions, I guess I could answer them now.
Tarolyn, this is Maxine. That was awesome. And so we will take questions for a few minutes. And then I'm also going to give you guys a little more info on some trap crops and some ideas of some things that you can do in your own gardens to help prevent having problems and how to attract beneficials. So if anyone has questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat box now. And other than that, we're going to go ahead and just add a little bit more to this specific trap crops. And I know Erin will probably have some feedback on that as well. And Erin, you do have a, or I'm sorry, Tarolyn, you do have a survey on here if you'd like to put that up as well.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to chime in and have questions, feel free to go ahead with them. Make sure that you complete your survey if you have just a moment, please. We'd appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
So while you're doing that, Maxine, we had a question that came in. How would I use the soap for the plants? I heard dawn and water and spray the plants. Is this correct?
So that's a great question. And yes, that is correct to some extent. We generally do not want to use any kind of soap that has an anti-degreaser or antibacterial in it. So definitely want to make sure that we're careful on that. Generally speaking, you're going to use about 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. And you're just going to spray down the insects when you see them.
Okay, the next question is how best to use mulch as opposed to dead plant material?
So mulch is really fantastic, and we really do want to try to use it whenever we possibly can. Mulch is different from dead plant crops because of the fact that it does not harbor pest insects or decaying matter that could contain bacteria or diseases that would cause us problems. Okay, I am trying to see if I can share my screen here, guys.
Another good question, how to get rid of nematodes?
Okay, so nematodes are a great question, and generally in the vegetable garden, we want to make sure that we're solarizing during summer months. So what that means is using a clear plastic over your garden during the hottest months of the year. So June, July, and August, we usually want to keep it over there about 6 weeks. And you're going to cover it and try to seal it so it makes like that greenhouse effect, and it's going to get you want it to get an average of about 120 to 130 degrees, and that'll kill off insects. Also, adding in organic matter will help with nematodes as well.
Okay, so somebody else asked, they've seen a lot of carpenter ants on their cucumber plants. Are they doing anything bad, or should I leave them be? That's been a very popular question on our Victory Gardener Facebook page.
Would you like to go ahead and answer that one, Erin? Because
Sure.
I could say my personal opinions on carpenter ants, but I'm highly allergic to them, so I stay away from them.
Okay, so you're going to see several different kinds of ants on your plants, especially your squash plants. When the flower first open, you'll see a lot of different ants on there. Typically, they're not hurting the plants at all. A lot of times they are either collecting some of that water, collecting some of that nectar, or they may be tending some of the insects that are there as well. So if you have aphids or whiteflies, they might be collecting the help me out, Maxine, can't think for a minute.
Right.
The sugar, the sugar that they're excreting or excreting. So they're typically not a problem. I usually leave mine alone. And in some cases, they will help pollinate certain plants. So normally they're not an issue. Now things like potatoes, I've had my carpenter ants have been in my potatoes because they're eating them. So, you know, you kind of want to watch what, and I don't typically treat my ants in the garden. I will treat around the garden once a year. I just disturb the nest until they just move. Okay. Somebody else said, I see a lot of snails in my cucumbers. Are they good or bad? I would say snails are not good.
Snails are generally not a good sign, no.
Yeah. Are there any plants to deter nematodes?
Ooh, that's a good question. So you could certainly use some different plants. I'm trying to think what specifics would be. Erin, do you know of any specifics to deter nematodes?
Yeah, I believe the marigold family.
Okay.
Look at the marigold family. They sometimes will.
Okay. So yeah, so other than that, I know there are specific plants that we use as indicator plants for nematodes, but that would be the only ones that I'm aware of for deterring nematodes.
Yes.
Oh,
go ahead, Maxine.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to ask the next question. Somebody said dahlias will repel nematodes.
Okay. I don't have any backup on that.
They don't grow great for me here. So if you're up north a little bit though, yes, you could look into that. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation? Yes, it will be on the Canvas course if you're a Victory Garden community member. It's on that online course, and then also we'll be putting the YouTube link, which I did post twice in the chat. So are you going to mention putting yellow in the garden, Maxine? Using yellow pots? Okay, she's not talking, so I'm going to go ahead and I just wanted to mention to everybody, you can attract beneficials. Now, keep in mind you'll attract some non-beneficial insects as well, but they're attracted to yellow. So a lot of times you might see like a 7-gallon yellow pot that somebody's painted with safety yellow color paint. They'll put that on a pole that's 3 to 4 feet above ground, and that's to attract insects. So it tends to attract a lot of the lady beetles and the lacewings, that sort of thing. So especially if you have a problem area, you can put that up. A mailing tube works really well that's been painted. And a lot of times we'll put that again near like a trap crop to attract insects to it. So that might be something you might want to try. So somebody said, we talked about snails are not good. Can you tell me what that means and how do you keep them out? Somebody else said iron phosphate keeps slugs out.
Iron phosphate definitely helps. Snails will eat a lot of your leafy greens as well as the foliage off your plants. So that's generally why we do not want them in our gardens. There's some home remedies for snails as well. So you can look that up online. Some of them include beer and others include salt. Celia said beer trap. Yes, that works quite well. But generally speaking, snails just do a lot of defoliating. So.
Yeah, I will tell you, if I'm working with snails, like trying to remove them, I do try and find some gloves, just because snails can transmit, carry interesting things, diseases and whatnot. So, and the mucus can agitate people's skin. So I do try and, find gloves when I'm removing them.
Yep.
All right, so Maxine, did you want to?
Yeah, I just had a couple things to add here on some trap crops for stink bugs, because that's one of the big pests that we see here. So if that's okay with you, I'll pull that up. Can you see my screen here?
We can, yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna try to see if it'll, okay. Oop. Okay, so just to follow up on what Tarolyn said, Tarolyn did a great job giving you guys an intro to beneficial insects. And just to kind of conclude what she said, you don't want to use any kind of harmful pesticides in your gardens. One, because we're talking about edibles. Sorry guys, my phone's going off here. Figure out how to mute it. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So one, make sure we don't want to put harmful pesticides in our vegetable gardens because we plan to eat that stuff. But two, we also don't want that to be lasting in our soil. and harming our good insects. So we have seen that with some clients here in Marion County that have brought us in samples where they have used systemic pesticides repeatedly, and they really have no biodiversity left in their garden. And let me just tell you, that is not something you want to see in your garden. It's really challenging to overcome, and that takes years. So try to stick with your basic pesticides. Your oils and soap sprays work really well. BT products for caterpillars, things like that. Secondly, Tarolyn mentioned providing host plants for butterflies and other pollinators, but making sure that you have both nectar and pollen plants and increasing your biodiversity. Biodiversity provides more benefit than probably anything else in the garden. So along with having space between your vegetables, having some flowers in there and changing things up a bit really helps quite a bit. So this kind of goes into the permaculture stuff, and I won't dive off into that, but just realize that plant diversity really improves your quality of your garden by more than one method and attracts a variety of different insects that will be helpful. And then secondly, providing shelter. So enhancing some vertical layers in there, adding some shrubbery nearby, flowering plants, all of the above will help provide areas for your beneficial insects to thrive. Also, if you're going to use biopesticides or natural enemies, you can purchase predatory insects, microbials, parasitic wasps, and parasitic nematodes. We do have an EDIS document on that. So if you Google EDIS and then UF and then insect 849 or IN 849, you can come up with that. You can copy this direct link, but there's some really fantastic biopesticides that are available on the market now that weren't available a number of years ago. So don't hesitate to reach out to those companies. We use them occasionally here in our office and our gardens, and they really make a big difference. Many of our greenhouse growers use them as well, so that's an option for you. Here's an example of the biocontrol products that are available out there, and we won't go into depth on this, but I just want you to be aware that these are there. You can purchase parasitic nematodes, predatory mites, predatory insects, parasitic wasps, as well as biopesticides. There is a table that'll tell you which ones would fit your needs best depending on the habitat that you're using, as well as what the natural enemies are. So, and again, there's another website from UF on the bottom, or you can get this directly from us if you have further questions on it. But biocontrol is pretty cool. It does the work for you, so you don't have to repeatedly spray pesticides, and you can add a natural enemy to your location. So really interesting stuff going on here, and we continue to learn more about this as we go. And then lastly, I wanted to cover was trap crops for stink bugs. Those of you who are trying to grow tomatoes, many of you have probably seen stink bugs in your gardens. Stink bugs are one of my biggest arch nemesis, and these guys prefer to feed on plants during very specific stages of maturity. And these guys will also, they can spread some diseases, and they will damage your fruit to where it's not edible. So oftentimes you'll see the discoloration and mottling look on your tomatoes. So the best thing you can do is to plant something for the stink bugs to keep them away from the crops that you're planning to take into your kitchen. So stink bugs can do a lot of damage and destroy entire crops. Usually once you see them in the nymph stage, you'll see a multitude of them, so they're not just individuals. If you do see individuals, try to squish them and get them out of there first. But planting small amounts of crops to attract these pests, and that reduces your need for pesticides, and then you can use spot treatments if possible to get rid of any that you need. So millet is one crop that you can use for stink bugs, and that grows pretty easily here. You can also use sunflowers. So you can see here, this is the leaf-footed bug on a giant sunflower. And you can see the high numbers of these. And when it's a trap crop, the great thing about that is this isn't something that you're worried about. You put it here specifically to protect the crops that you want to eat. Here's another example of leaf-footed stink bugs on yucca. So this is a great example here, and you can see they're going specifically for the fruit and flowers of this plant. So these are just a few ideas. There's many more options out there as far as trap crops, but I thought when we're talking about beneficials and trying to prevent pests from our garden, this was a very appropriate thing to add in. Erin, do you want to add anything on trap crops?
I don't think so at this time, unless you have something specific. I use things like sunflowers, buckwheat, things like that, but I have learned to not put them in the garden necessarily.
Correct.
To put them on the edges or away from the garden, which is hard for me, especially for things like the flowers that I want in the garden.
Right, right. So just a quick summary of your seasonal trap crops that are available here. In fall and spring, we usually want to use the colder weathered crops. So crimson clover, some of your vetches, sunflowers, and buckwheat is great. I use buckwheat on my property a lot. And in the spring to fall, we're going to use sorghum, millet, sunflower, buckwheat, even okra and field peas. So, and then also using multiple cultivars and providing a range of maturity dates. So doing rotational planting, so you don't have them all mature at one time. So, and then also the taller cultivars, like you saw in the previous picture with the giant sunflower, increase a barrier, the barrier that you're trying to provide. So don't necessarily just use things that are going to be low growing ground covers. Having those taller crops can be really beneficial. And again, this goes into our vertical layering aspect as well. So, and then even using them in portable containers can be beneficial. So if you don't want to put some of the stuff in your landscape, or you don't have somewhere you want to add it, add in a small container of it. That can be really fantastic. So other tactics can include adding visual or odor cues, traps, and even some of the attractive chemicals, but doing so in such a manner that, again, it keeps it in a contained area. So, and then you can remove any stink bugs that are on your crops that you're wanting to protect with a vacuum. You can do it by hand or even use insecticides after you knock them off of the trap crop. But this is a great method that you can incorporate into your gardening practices that you're already using. So if you have any questions on that, don't hesitate to let us know. But I just thought that was, something that we should probably talk about today. So that's all I have. And, if anybody has further questions, I think that this has been great information. And Tarolyn, we really appreciate you talking to us about beneficials and about some of the insects that we should keep an eye open for.
We had two questions or comments that came in, Maxine. So the first one is, so neem isn't recommended. I'm not sure which she's talking about, if it's for the stink bugs.
Okay, so neem is definitely something we would recommend. Neem oil is a horticultural oil. However, you've got to be careful using it during this time of year, because it can burn your plants during the heat of the summer. So take caution with that. And you don't want to use any kind of pesticides on your trap crops. You want the bad pests to go to the trap crops. So depending on which one you're speaking of, but neem we do recommend quite often.
Okay, and the next one is, what about a little DE, which is diatomaceous earth? Very sensitive to ants, and they love this person's garden just on specific hills.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, you can use diatomaceous earth to some extent. It's not going to necessarily eliminate the colony. That would be a little bit difficult. You can knock back the population. And what it does is it basically will rub that exoskeleton on the insect, and then it kind of dries them out, is the idea. So you can try it. If you have the larger carpenter ants, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than, say, some of our smaller ant species that we would see. A couple other choices, we talked about boiling water. That is an option. And then also spinosad, which I know we've mentioned over a couple of weeks. That is an organic type product, which is certainly an option. It is labeled for ants if you have a really serious problem, especially for like fire ants. But one thing I wanted to mention, Sia had just said on specific hills, if you do ant control, if it's something like diatomaceous earth, or if you're baiting in your yard, don't dump the bait on the pile, because it kind of freaks the ants out, and so they get a little bit scared and then tend to not go near it. But if you sprinkle it on, when they're foraging, they're much more likely to come into contact with it. So that's a good trick that we use. And then any wild birds feed on stink bugs? Do you know?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'll be honest, the answer depends on how hungry those birds are and what other food sources are available. Stink bugs are generally not a favored pest of most predators, including birds, just because they do emit a really nasty chemical. So most birds won't prey on stink bugs.
Okay, next question. Any specific herbs that deter pest insects?
Not that I'm really familiar with. We do mix herbs into our garden and plant them intermittently, but I don't know of any of them that are actually have the liliopathic characteristics to deter pests. So usually we do marigolds and other flowering plants to either A, attract pests to those specific plants, or B, to deter them from specific areas.
Sure. And yes, we will repost the link for the webinar. Let me do that right now.
I'm also going to post the link for the survey again.
Here's the long, this is the long version, but that's it right there.
Okay. Oh.
And you should be able to Google Victory 2020 Garden YouTube, and it looks like it's coming up a little bit better now.
Okay, and then we've got a question, garlic in my bed. There were no bugs on it. Also have luck with society garlic. Yes, I would agree with that. Society garlic has worked really well for me. And I've heard others talk about garlic, but I've never used that in my beds.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Onions, chives tend to work well for fruit trees. Somebody asked how many CEs. I'm assuming continuing education. Is that what they're thinking? Yes, that would be one. Yeah, at least if you're one of mine. Maxine, you can chime in differently.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we're almost at the 1 hour mark, so. Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions. And then if you have any others, you know, let us know. You guys can always email us, Facebook, call us. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Oh, she said, hey, Maxine. She said,
Yep.
right at the end, it says the server is asking for a username and password.
Uh-oh. If it's asking for a username and password, don't worry about it, and we'll send it out via email.
Sounds good. Thanks.
That's about the quickest response I can get out of that one.
Thank you.